As far as I know, and this talk is that Stephen Shinopoulos is going to give us is a lot about the Mass Save program, and most of us probably know something about it, but I'm sure we're going to learn a lot more. It's designed to help residents and businesses become, more efficient and save money. They do home energy assessments, take a comprehensive look at your home and figure out ways to increase the efficiency and keep it comfortable. And I think he's going to explore the background of Mass Save, what you're going to expect during an energy assessment, and the rebates that are available. Stephen has a passion for assisting, educating, and empowering communities in Massachusetts, and that's fueled his journey through influential roles. His work in the environment and education fields has allowed him to connect directly with communities and enact positive change. In joining HomeWorks Energy, and that's a company that does a lot of the work for the Mass Save program, the largest home performance contractor in Massachusetts. He has helped thousands of residents reduce their carbon footprint and save money with Mass Save. In his current role as partnership coordinator, he's excited to form meaningful and strategic partnerships and work together to make the world a brighter place. So we'll be very interested in hearing what the partnership coordinator position is and what you do, and a lot about Mass Save, and and let you know we do know quite a bit about Mass Save, and are really hoping that its direction in the future will go beyond energy efficiency and into reducing, the carbon footprint. But I'm sure you're going to deal with some of that. So, and feel free. So, let you take over, Stephen.
Thanks very much, Tom. So as Tom said, my name's Stephen Shinopoulos. I'm the partnership coordinator at HomeWorks Energy, which is a partner of the Mass Save program. So just to start out, I want to say thank you to the Chelmsford Climate Action Team and the library for organizing and hosting this. And again, as Tom said, I'm going to be kind of sharing a history of the Mass Save program, current offerings, what you can expect if you were to have a home energy assessment, and just the rebates and options available in the program. So I'm going to share my screen here for a PowerPoint presentation. Okay. All righty. So today we're going to be exploring Mass Save and what home energy assessments entail. So getting right into the history of Mass Save. Mass Save has been around since the 1970s in one form or another. So originally, each electric and gas utility ran their own version of the program. And then it's in 2008 that the big utility companies in the state like National Grid and Eversource came together, and they formed together what's now known as Mass Save. So it's more of a statewide approach to home and commercial energy efficiency. So an overview of the program is that it is a state mandated program. It's sponsored by the big utility companies in the state. Of course, there are some exceptions like smaller municipal companies, but generally there's very widespread adoption of this throughout the state. And it's funded by a small charge on our utility bills. So that's on your electric, and if you heat your home with gas, it's called the energy efficiency charge, and it's about 5% of the bill that goes to fund the Mass Save program. So, kind of the scope of what Mass Save covers, we call it the Mass Save umbrella sometimes. And one of the big features of it is residential homes, so single through 4 family. That's what I'm going to be speaking about today primarily. And we work with National Grid, Eversource, Columbia Gas, although of course now that's part of Eversource, and Cape Light. So we cover most of the state. There are chapters of the program to deal with larger multifamily properties and commercial as well. It's not something we do in-house, so I'm not going to spend much time on it, but if occasionally when that comes up, I help refer people to the appropriate channels when that does arise. Okay, so getting into the specifics of the home energy assessment, we offer, of course, traditional in-person home energy assessments, and then kind of as a response to everything that happened in 2020 and just, being conscientious of the situation, the program did roll out virtual home energy assessments. So it allows the same access to the program just via taking picture and phone call or video chat. And if, some further projects are, something that you might be interested in, we still do an in-person walkthrough later to make sure that, we're ensuring the quality and the scope of any work. So that's just within mind of, reducing time in home and things like that. So the first step of a traditional home energy assessment is the health and safety check. And the first point of that is what we call the combustion safety test. So the combustion safety test is it tests the carbon monoxide, the efficiency, the airflow of your heating system. It also would look at things like your domestic hot water and potentially your gas stove if you cook with gas. Next is a weatherization or insulation check throughout the home. So, we're going to look throughout the home, basement, walls, and attic, assess the current insulation, any rebates you'd qualify for, and provide that information. Part of the program is also, there's a big emphasis on HVAC, increasingly, as Tom mentioned, just kind of to preface this presentation, there's more and more of an emphasis on heat pumps these days just to provide efficiency heating and cooling. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that, but I do have a couple slides later in the presentation to address those. And then finally, we have the heat loan. This is state financing available through Mass Save, which you qualify for by having the home energy assessment. It's another point that I'll be spending more time on later, but just in short, it's a 0% financing that you can use to cover most of the projects that are in the Mass Save scope. Okay, so starting with the home energy assessment, just as a big picture overview, it's a comprehensive inspection and review of a home's energy performance. So I like to say that it's a top to bottom, or in this case, kind of a bottom to top look at the home. That's because we start with the heating system, which is typically in the basement. So we'll assess the heating system, how efficiently it's working. We'll move up through the home from the basement to checking the walls in the living space, and then the attic, and we'll assess the weatherization quality throughout the home and see what rebates might be available to you. So as I said, the first step is that combustion safety test. So whether you have a forced hot water boiler or forced hot air furnace, we're going to do that combustion safety test. So we're testing the airflow to make sure that combustion gases are leaving the home safely and properly. We're also taking an efficiency measure to make sure that the system is working as advertised, and just making sure everything's running smoothly. So the continuation of that in the top right image, this is a domestic hot water tank. As some of you might know who have experience with this is it's a standalone hot water tank, meaning it has its own combustion source. So our home energy specialist here is doing a combustion safety test on this unit as well. And then finally, this is a home that cooks with natural gas too. So we are doing a carbon monoxide on that, a carbon monoxide check on that as well. The next step of the process is assessing the weatherization throughout the home. So starting in the top left here, this is the rim joist or the perimeter or the sill of the basement. And we typically will apply fiberglass or a rigid foam board, depending how much space there is along the rim joist. This is going to reduce cold air from drafting into the home, particularly during the winter, although of course it does help during the summer as well. And moving to the top right image, these are a couple very typical kinds of insulation you'll see in walls as well as various other places in the home. This pink stuff is pretty famously known. That's classic fiberglass batting that's been used for decades now. We still use that in certain applications, but Mass Save has primarily moved to using the cellulose blown-in insulation. There's a few reasons for that. Just to list them off is that it's more cost effective. It's cheaper to produce, and it also has a higher R value. So it's just quite literally more bang for your buck. Um, it has some kind of secondary benefits, like it's treated to be fire resistant. And that same treatment also is something that bugs tend to not enjoy. So it kind of acts as a bug repellent as well. So it has a few kind of secondary benefits to just the insulation aspect. And in the bottom right here, this is more cellulose insulation. This is in an attic space. So the program has changed this over the years. The current rebate for attic insulation is up to 15 inches. So we'll bump whatever you have up at the attic up to that 15 inches and really just help, maintain comfort in the home, warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer. And then finally, in the bottom left, this is a knee wall, which is, like the side portion of an attic. You'd see this on a Cape style home or potentially a colonial if it has a finished third floor. This is rigid foam board, which is the same material as the what's now become pretty famous, the spray foam insulation. It's the exact same material. It's just in a prefabricated foam board. And we'll use this for certain applications like vertical surfaces that something, like fiberglass or cellulose just aren't a practical fit for. So in certain applications, we'll use this foam board as well. And it's an excellent insulator. The goals of the program. Now, this is just a kind of a classic example of just an older, somewhat older home in New England, Massachusetts, where there might have been partial or spotty insulation that over the years, work has been done, and it might not be giving you kind of a comprehensive coat of insulation in the attic. Goal of the program is just to bump it up to that strong 15 inches that are really going to make the home more comfortable. And I do also like to just make a side note when I get to this slide that you might be looking at this blanket of insulation and wondering, oh, I have storage in the attic or a pull down staircase or potentially an HVAC system. And that's one case where we do still use that fiberglass batting insulation. We call it damming, as in like you would dam off a river. And that fiberglass batting is what would seal off certain areas like your staircase, your insulation, your HVAC, or your storage. So we're prepared to deal with attics on a case-by-case basis. And just kind of to build off of that, the program is very aware that two things are that the attic is a very ideal area to weatherize your home. It's relatively simple, and it makes a big impact on the comfort and the savings in the home. And in turn, we make an emphasis to help homeowners with that because understandably, people have storage up there. They might not be able to deal with it themselves. So we can address that when it comes up. We also do what we call an attic floor buildup, which is just a cool little tidbit I like to mention for folks who want storage in their attic and the maximum amount of insulation. We can actually build up the joists to accommodate both of those. So just a cool, a couple of pieces of info about working with attics. And we're moving on through weatherization. This in particular is a slide on what we call, or what the program calls air sealing. So this is one area where Mass Save does use spray foam. It's to, again, to air seal. So it would be around the perimeter, the rim joist. It would also be for the top plates or attic penetrations. And another example is this is a thermodome or an insulated stair cover for a pull down staircase in the attic. There are also certain other aspects of air sealing like door sweeps and weather stripping. And just one cool piece of the Mass Save program is that all of these air sealing measures, as they're deemed, are covered at 100% rebate. So all of this work can be done at absolutely no cost. I do like to take a minute to just address working in older homes because, of course, Massachusetts has a lot of beautiful historical homes. And it's something that we work with commonly. It just might be a little bit different on a case-by-case thing compared to some newer builds. But as older homes didn't typically have as much insulation. The building code started to change in the 1980s to accommodate more wall insulation, more attic insulation. But there can often be a lot of opportunity to retrofit in these older homes. Part of the process that we work through is something we call pre-weatherization barriers. And these are typical things you'd run into, like knob and tube wiring, which is the original form of electrical wiring that was used in homes, structural integrity of older walls, for instance, water damage, asbestos, just kind of the, the full assortment of projects you might have to work through in a home. There are some there is some opportunity for working with windows in the Mass Save program. There are not rebates for replacing windows. You can, however, finance moving from single to double pane windows. So that's another point I'm going to address in more detail in just a minute. We are, of course, the big thing to take away from working with older homes is that we're very mindful of wall work. We do blown-in insulation because, of course, Mass Save is a retrofit program to work with existing homes. So we're very careful working with walls because that is the one area where it just takes extra caution, and we don't want to insulate a wall in a particularly old home that isn't structurally sound. Now, that being said, there are some very easily accessible retrofitting programs that even if for some reason you didn't want to insulate the walls, you can air seal the basement and the attic. Attic insulation is very easily accessible, and it's a relatively easy project. The same goes for the basement, insulating the perimeter of the basement, crawl spaces, and then instant savings measures, which are something that we give out no cost during the assessments, and I'll be going through those item by item in just a second. So this is a little bit more about the pre-weatherization barriers that are typical in Massachusetts. So, starting in the top left, just matter of factly speaking, mold is something we're all, aware of as homeowners. The program does take that very seriously. So there's a big emphasis on proper ventilation in the attic to make sure that air isn't getting trapped and preventing this issue from happening in the first place. The top right is knob and tube wiring, which I just mentioned. This is the original form of electrical wiring that was used in homes. Still perfectly effective and works, functionally very well. It can just pose a bit of a fire hazard if you're doing work in the area, putting insulation in the area. So we do remediate knob and tube wiring and update it when possible. Jumping over to the bottom left here, this is vermiculite. More commonly, you might be familiar with the term asbestos, which is actually a great natural insulator, but unfortunately was found to be a carcinogen. So hand in hand with that, vermiculite is also a natural mineral, a good insulator. It just turned out that when they were mining vermiculite, there was asbestos in the area. So as a blanket policy, we treat vermiculite as though it has asbestos in it. It's just another piece that we'd remediate before doing any additional weatherization work. And finally, I saved our friendly or not so friendly ice dams for the last. And the reason behind that is simply that it's as difficult as these can be and frustrating to work with. It's something that weatherization work does typically help with because, of course, ice dams are formed from hot air leaving the home during the winter. It melts snow on the roof and it refreezes due to the cold temperature. Weatherization work reduces that heat loss, so it also helps with ice dams. So there's some kind of year-round benefits that aren't the first thing you think of when working with weatherization. And next, we have the instant savings measures I mentioned. So these, there are several options for these. In the top left, you have advanced power strips. We give out up to 2 of these at every home. And these turn off certain sockets when they're not in use to reduce like phantom power loss, as we call it. The top right is a water aerator. So these can go on your bathroom sinks. We also have a kitchen model that kind of has a flow valve to increase or decrease the flow. Bottom right, we have a shower head. We also stock the handheld shower head. And having done a home energy assessment at my own house, I always like to say that despite saving water, these are surprisingly high pressure. So I enjoy these myself. And in the bottom left, we have a Honeywell thermostat. This is your standard programmable thermostat. We install these during the home energy assessment at no cost, as many as thermostats as you need. These can be set on a timer, so they kick on in the morning, kick off at night, and they can have a separate schedule for the weekends for those of us who like to sleep in. So they can accommodate that and keep the home at your ideal temperature throughout the day. Next, we have continuing with the instant savings measures I just discussed. This is the report about those instant savings measures. So I started out at HomeWorks doing these home energy assessments. A couple of years ago, I did one at my parents' house down in Westwood. So this is from the assessment I did for my parents. I'm not going to go through every item, line by line, but it covers the home energy assessment itself. In their case, I installed one of those new programmable thermostats, faucet aerator, shower head, several different light bulbs. And it gives you a total of the value for this. So in their case, it was a little under $500. These items are always no cost to the homeowner. So that's why we call them instant savings measures. You don't pay for them and they start saving you right away. And then in the bottom right, we have an annual energy savings projection. So for my parents, it was going to save them about a little over $200 a year. And next we have the weatherization recommendations we make. So this is broken up into two categories, which I'm going to just go through quickly. The top portion is the air sealing work that I mentioned earlier. And so as I said, air sealing is covered with a 100% rebate by Mass Save. So this is an assessment I did down in Plymouth a couple of years ago. For this home, some door sweeps and weather stripping. They needed the Thermadome cover for their attic staircase, and then the spray foam air sealing, which was for the basement perimeter and the attic. And in this home, it was a relatively small ranch home, but it was about $950 worth of air sealing. The rebate is 100%. $0 copay, and $175 roughly in annual savings. In the bottom portion, we have the weatherization work, which is just what you think of as like the physical insulation that we do in homes. In this case, we were insulating one wall. They had a part of the home insulated and part of it not. Adding some insulation to the attic, some of that fiberglass batting to seal off certain areas, and then some foam board for the basement perimeter. So in this case, it was about $2,800 worth of recommendations. The rebate for weatherization work is 75%. So the Mass Save kicks in $2,100. Final copay for all of this work was $710. And you can see putting together the 174 and the 507 that it pays off in about 1 year, which is, it does vary from home to home, but with the rebates, you can realize the return on investment pretty quickly with these projects. Okay, and finally, essentially what I just went over, the home energy assessment report. We generate that with the homeowner and go over it, just because every house is, of course, a case-by-case kind of custom assessment, and we go over our findings each time with the homeowner. Some notes about just current climate, 2020 and moving forward. The program did shut down temporarily in 2020 to make sure that the work was done safely and properly. We are very persistent and adamant about following these safety procedures. So our crews wear full Tyvek suits, masks, of course. We hand sanitize before and after every appointment, and we do this through all portions of the home. So if we are doing weatherization work, we're going to be wearing PPE throughout the home and taking every precaution we can. Okay, and now to address HVAC a little bit, I'm just going to just a couple quick slides on this, but I commonly get a lot of questions about heat pumps or ductless mini splits, and this is a very popular heating and cooling technology. It's great for kind of the buffer seasons, so it's really, really effective in spring and summer. They do lose some efficiency in like the dead of winter, but they provide supplemental heating and they're very effective for cooling. So there is some year-round benefit to these. It's an alternative to ducted systems, which if you don't already have them, it's kind of a nightmare of an invasive process to add ductwork to your home. So this is an alternative where you don't need a forced hot air system. The same fundamental technology is available, which is a very simple install. and they're very flexible. So they can be installed in specific rooms or to cover an entire home. And there's just a lot of adaptability that's, not available in other HVAC systems. So kind of to sum up, to get the big picture of ductless mini splits versus central air versus traditional window units, ductless mini splits are the most efficient. They're the quietest, and they also have the most flexible zoning options. Central air is next. It's not as efficient, somewhat noisier, less zoning options, especially if you're making some kind of adaptation to the system. And then windows, of course, window units are the least efficient, the loudest, and it's just a room by room solution. Okay, and finally, we have the heat loan. So this is the financing that's available through the Mass Save program. It is 0% financing. It can be used to finance pretty much all of the work I covered today. So that's heating systems, hot water, air conditioning, single pane window replacement, insulation copay, and health and safety issues. So some of those projects I mentioned, you might be thinking, oh, remediating asbestos or knob and tube wiring. Those are pretty expensive projects, just generally speaking. Fortunately, you can use the financing to help with that. And it's a 0% financing for up to $25,000 over 7 years. So it's really, there aren't other financing options like this. That really makes a lot of these projects much easier to tackle. And one keynote I like to make about this heat loan is a one-time use per household. So people tend to use it on the bigger ticket items rather than just maybe the insulation copay, which is a relatively modest cost in a lot of home improvement projects. Okay, and then we do carbon footprints. So I took the liberty of just looking at historical information in Chelmsford. And again, this is just home energy assessments that Homeworks Energy has done specifically. But since the start of 2019, we've done 381 energy assessments in the state, which offsets carbon emissions by about 6,400 metric tons. So kind of on a home by home basis, sometimes I wonder myself, like, how much of an impact does this really have? But when you look at it from the big picture thing, the big picture perspective, each assessment does add up to a larger picture, and it kind of realized pretty substantial savings. This 6,400 metric tons of carbon is the equivalent of planting 106,000 trees and having them grow for 10 years, or taking 1,400 cars off the road for 1 year. So there are some pretty substantial savings by doing this kind of efficiency weatherization work. And the savings are realized, of course, by those instant savings measures I talked about and weatherization work. So kind of in conclusion, why do people do this? The Mass Save program, generally speaking, everybody has their reasons. I'm personally very motivated by the environmental aspects. I've volunteered on the environmental committee in my hometown for many years, and spent most of my career in the environmental field. But one thing that tends to speak to everybody is it does save folks money, and that's something that just everyone can benefit from. It does help with the comfort in your home. So people often think of insulation as helping during the winter, but it really does also keep your home cooler in the summer. So it's a year-round benefit. It does lower greenhouse gas emissions. So, you're going to be using less fossil fuels if you're properly weatherizing your home. A lot of the instant savings measures we provide are also going to reduce your electrical bill. So drawing less power from the power grid, and just across the board, lowering those greenhouse gas emissions. There is a strong health and safety component as well. So, performing things like the combustion safety tests that I mentioned, as well as looking at those pre-weatherization barriers like asbestos or water damage. The program does take those measures very seriously and has, programs and opportunities available to help with those when needed. And finally, just preservation. Weatherization work helps make the home, more structurally sound and protected from the elements. So there is a preservation aspect as well to doing this retrofit work. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And Tom, if you want to take over, if we have any questions or anything, I'm happy to do that.
Well, yes, I certainly hope we do have some questions. one thing I could just note, I have myself had Mass Save come out a few times, and I did have cellulose insulation done on all the outer walls last year, and I had aluminum siding. So I was really reluctant to do it, thinking that, they damaged the siding and it would look terrible after, and I'd have to replace it. So just like to reassure that in my experience, it still looked pretty good afterward, although my wife might disagree. She doesn't like it. But so that was nice. But so I'm sure if anyone has a question, how should we do this? I guess I'll just raise your hand, or you can use the hand through the computer type one. So are there any questions at all? Well,
I think we got one or two.
Okay, Felicia, why don't you go first?
I live in a housing authority structure.
Mhm.
Are you aware, Stephen, if the towns and cities are taking these steps as much as possible in housing like mine?
That's a really good question. It's not something that I work with on a day-to-day basis, but I will. I'm glad you brought that up, because I will take a moment to just mention that I know it's a little bit different than what you're asking, but there are separate portions of the program to deal with folks who have fuel assistance. So I never want someone to feel like, oh, I can't access this because of whatever I have going on in my personal life. There's always some program to help with this efficiency work.
I think they may have done a little bit, judging by they did all new heating systems. I think they might be, like you were saying, the ductless mini system.
Oh, that's great. Did you notice a big difference, or?
Well, yeah, I've only lived here 2 years, but I like it. It's quiet. It seems much more efficient. It only comes on absolutely when needed.
That's great.
So yeah, so it's good to know and keep moving in the right direction, I guess.
Yep.
On windows, you mentioned there are no rebates for those, and that's kind of a shame, since that's such a big loss of heat, and some of the I'm just wondering if you at least have any thoughts or recommendations on what companies that do replacement windows are best at. I mean, some of them it's incredibly expensive, right?
Yeah. So are you interested in particular kind of referrals, or just kind of from a general?
I think like a general,
Yep.
like, are there any, any that that you could just say, hey, avoid those, they're just,
I see.
overpriced, versus here are some companies that do good work and seem to be reasonable, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I will say that I have some experience working. We've worked with Coastal Windows and Exteriors, which I know is located on the North Shore. Also Window World, which of course, I think is the biggest installer in the state, if not the country. I've had good experiences with them, and I know that they offer high efficiency windows. And while there are no rebates, at least if you happen to have those single panes, you can finance them at 0%. So there's still something at least to pitch in with that work.
Okay. All right. Lately in the climate activism community, there seems to be a lot of talk about how, the Mass Save program going forward should do more for low income, climate justice types of communities, implying that, the people who are using it, in the recent times have been people with money to begin with, when, you would think that shouldn't really matter. So why are people getting on your case, Mass Save's case,
Right.
saying it's not doing enough to roll out these benefits, this program, to people that don't live in communities like Chelmsford and such.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point that I'm glad you brought up. So I think a couple points that I want to address are Mass Save has made some improvements in that regard, I would say. So post everything that happened with COVID in 2020, they did increase the weatherization rebates for renters and for multifamily homes to 100%. So
That's good.
yeah, it makes a big difference. So in two family up to 4 family homes, you can have the weatherization work done 100% at no cost. Air sealing, weatherization, the whole thing. Now for folks, maybe in single family or that just can't afford stuff like this, it's, everyone has their own circumstances, and there is a chapter of Mass Save that it has its own separate branding. It's called Mass CAP, Community Action Program, and they are able to do the same fundamental services. And it's not something, we have relationship with the CAP agencies. I don't like to get into the exact numbers because it isn't my, I don't like to make promises I'm not 100% sure on, but they do the same fundamental services, and those services are often at no cost or heavily reduced. So there are still opportunities available to hopefully to everybody in the state.
Okay. Yes, great. Brian, could you unmute? I'm trying. I don't know if I can unmute you as host, but
Well, I got it.
okay. Go ahead.
I have 2 questions. One is on those combination heat pump AC
Yep.
units that go in the wall. You don't offer anything except loan assistance for that, correct?
I believe you can use the heat loan for it. So you can still access that 0% financing if you were interested.
And do you offer any kind of education on, there's a variety of those units and, what is best, efficiency wise and so forth? My understanding is that if you were to rely on a heat pump to, in the middle of the winter and a very cold day, it wouldn't be able to keep up with the heat.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it is really in the dead of winter that you couldn't rely on it, but kind of in the buffer, leading into the dead of winter and coming into the spring, where it will make a big help with the it will be able to cover most of the heating if you wanted it to. I will say that these heating and cooling assessments are always no cost, so you can have a trained specialist kind of go over the options with you, the efficiencies, system sizes, kind of all of that, and walk you through a kind of a custom assessment for your home.
Okay, and I have one other question, if that's all right, Tom.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
That's in regards to your old boilers or furnaces. Is there still a program that helps with that rebate wise if they're a certain age?
Yes. So I believe it's System S. It depends if it's a boiler or furnace, but it's in the 15 to 20 year range. And there are new rebates available for those systems. You can find those on the Mass Save website. And they're pretty substantial. I mean, I think it's, again, I don't know them off the top of my head, but there are rebates available for oil and natural gas systems. And they can, be in like the $1,000 to $2,000 range. So, pretty reasonable, a decent chunk of money for a project like that.
Okay. And with the new law that came into effect that wants to get us off carbon, where I am, there is no gas, so it's only oil heat. Should I be concerned about putting a new oil heat furnace in, that 15 years down the road, they're going to say, hey, you know what, you need to switch that out now because of this new law,
Right. Yeah. I would be surprised if it's completely taken off the table. But I think there's going to, going back to your first question, there's going to be more and more emphasis on those ductless mini splits and heat pumps to just take as much demand off the fossil fuels as possible. So I wouldn't expect them to be completely wiped off the table in the next 15 years or so, but just an emphasis on trying to do those new high efficiency systems as much as possible.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to the library in Chelmsford for hosting this.
Thanks,
Well,
Brian.
I'd like to follow up with what you were saying to Brian. You know, recently there was a hearing, a CECP hearing on a plan, you know, to get us closer to carbon, you know, to net zero by 2050, and for the upcoming milestones that have to be met. And they asked for input, and people were saying that that Mass Save has to change, that they can't be offering incentives for people upgrading from oil to gas furnaces, and that, you know, we really need to push, you know, getting off of even gas, rather, not just oil. And so I'd be really leery of putting in a new oil furnace now. I think that there's got to be. Are you saying there are no incentives? If you took an oil furnace today and replaced it with a heat pump system, and you know, I mean, they're expensive. We have to admit that for like the central ground source type of heat pumps. Yep. But it is feasible and possible today to totally heat your house through the New England winters without an oil or a gas furnace. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, the idea that the mini splits, there are hyperheat ones that go down to minus 15 degrees.
Right.
I think the gas industry is you know, paying for Mass Save in somewhat, and they don't want to cut off their own, you know, nose. But it's a matter of more or less. If the temperature goes down to 0 degrees, your heat pump's going to struggle. It still can work and heat your house, but it's going to cost more. The electricity, it won't be as efficient. And so a lot of installers are recommending, you know, that you have a hybrid type. They will install a brand new high efficiency gas furnace with a heat pump inside, you know, inside. It's a hybrid, and the heat pump will do all the heating until the temperature gets low enough that, you know, it's determined that it's not cost effective, and then it can swap over, you know, to the gas, say. It can be true with an oil furnace as well, I assume. Yeah, and yeah, in fact, I do. I know a guy in Stowe, Arnie Epstein, who has an oil furnace and two heat pump. He has a mini split, and he has a what do you call it? A duct. You know, heat pumps can use existing ducts with an exchanger, which is, you know, similar to your central heating, you know, oil or gas furnace type of. And his oil bill went down, you know, 85%. So he is still, you know, I think people are a little bit, what do you call it, squeamish or hesitant to make the leap. I myself have 4 mini split heat pumps. I've sealed all the ducts in my house completely, and I moved the thermostat for the gas furnace down into the basement, only to heat it enough to keep my pipes from freezing. Mm-hmm. And I had the walls insulated, and so we'll see next winter, this winter coming up, if it is adequate. But I do have a fallback. I could actually use the furnace if I had to. But if I don't, then next year I'll put a mini split to heat my basement, and then I'll take and send that gas furnace to the junk heap, hopefully. You know, because if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, we need to electrify everything as much as we can. You know, Well, someone else must have a question or at least disagree.
Well, I will say, I mean, I'm
Careful.
definitely with you. I think there's more and more emphasis on the heat pumps, and we're trying to get away from the fossil fuels as much as possible. And I think also, like you said, like weatherization is a key component of that, because it's gonna, if your walls and whatnot are fully insulated, it's gonna help you heat with that heat pump year round. So I know
Right.
they're also seriously talking about increasing the rebates for heat pumps available through Mass Save. So it's kind of a developing situation, I'd say.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's legislation in the works. There's articles in the paper all the time about this.
Right.
And if people have been reading the Globe, and so it will start to turn the corner, and the heat pumps will become, much more prevalent. I would say. Now, one thing I didn't know was you mentioned about in the basement. I've never had them actually suggest that I add insulation there. I'm a little flummoxed. I don't understand. I wonder if there's situations where it doesn't really warrant.
It's possible. If
Yeah.
do you have a finished basement, or
Yeah,
that would
Yeah.
do it? So it's really only if the rim joist is readily accessible. Otherwise, we'd have to do some kind of working with the ceiling that isn't practical. So
oh, okay.
yeah.
Too invasive. Oh.
I think Elizabeth.
You need to unmute, Elizabeth. Yeah,
Bottom left.
I'm hitting the ask to unmute button.
There.
Okay, good.
So
'Cause that-
I have lived in Chelmsford for over 30 years. I think I moved in 1993, and I got a handy woman special. I had finished the whole first floor myself.
Oh.
You'd probably want to rip it apart and say, "Uh-oh, you did this wrong." But I am interested in ideas. I don't like blown-in insulation. I'd rather spend the money and put the Pink Panther through my walls.
Mhm.
That's just me. You could probably talk me out of it. My stove has issues. I wanted to get a new stove. My friend said I should just get a plumber to fix it. I don't
Mhm.
use the oven anymore. It's just me. Only time I did it was when I roasted turkeys. Nobody wants to come to my house for Thanksgiving dinner anymore. Or when I made brownies, and now I'm pre-diabetic. So I don't eat brownies anymore. So I don't care that the oven, but if it's a hazard, I don't think it is. But so there are certain reasons why I'd want your services, just to say, boy, you need a new brain, Betty. Just to check a few things out and maybe offer me ideas. I'm now upstairs. I've gutted the first room, and I've almost completed trimming one window, and then I have one flanker left to put in, and all my windows are done. But yeah, I think it's good to be safe, because I'm not really technically competent, and it might someone to say, oh, your house is going to burn down next time you plug into this outlet, or I don't know. That's all I have to say. What do you think?
Well, I think that's amazing. You've done as much work as you have on it
I've got
yourself.
pictures to prove it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, all I guess I can say is that, we all pay into the program, and it is no cost to have the assessment. So if you're looking for ideas, you can always get somebody there to look at it in person with you and talk through the options. So
Good.
I'd like to ask the audience, has anybody not had a, Mass Save Energy Assessment, an HEA?
I think a long time ago somebody came.
Okay, so nobody said they haven't had one. So everybody here has had one? Okay. Probably.
It wasn't as thorough as that. Someone drilled a hole in my pipe to my boiler and stuck a
Mm.
needle in it. And I go, "What'd you go damage my pipe for?"
Yeah.
You know, but I guess that's where you see how much stuff is going up or something.
Right. Yeah, we would test the airflow and that and patch it up after, I'll say. So
Yeah, no, they didn't.
Yeah. oh, okay. Well, we always do. At least these days. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I had another question. You mentioned
Hmm.
if you qualify for rebates or incentives, what does that mean? What do people have to have? How do they qualify?
okay. Yeah. So as long as you have the energy assessment, which means that you just have a standard rate code on the utility bills, that's really the key component in qualifying for the pieces I talked about today. I'm not as familiar with the fuel assistance program or for folks who might live in a big condo association, which we don't service. But generally speaking, if you're in the single to 4 family range and you have a standard rate code, you're going to qualify for all the rebates and services
Oh,
I
okay.
went over today. Yep.
Okay, given some of the current push, it looks promising that it will expand, so more and more people will qualify, hopefully.
I certainly hope so. And it's great that we have the mass cap program available as well for folks who don't. So there's, some options out there.
Okay. Well, I've run out of questions. So, hey, wait, we got
Jeff.
someone. I'll ask you to unmute. Okay, Jeff Carney.
I think I was just wondering why there's no discussion of passive solar heating and maximizing what potential there is for direct heating from sunlight, or designing homes so that they would be passive solar heated.
It's an interesting question. So I will say it's something like the rebates change on a year-to-year basis. So I couldn't tell you what is going to officially be available in 2022. I do know that I should probably add this to the presentation, honestly, is that one new offering of the heat loan in the last year is that you can finance battery storage with it. I realize that's not exactly what you're asking about, but there's some development on the solar side, I would say. Currently, that's not something that Mass Save offers rebates for, but I will say that we partner with solar companies in order to address those situations and provide whatever options are available. So it's I'd say it's another thing that's kind of a developing situation, and I can't, I don't know what the future is going to hold for available rebates, but hopefully we keep trending in that direction.
I wasn't talking about solar panels exactly. I was talking about direct heating from the sun.
Right. Well, okay. So, I mean, do you mean through like windows and like sun access? Is that kind of what?
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's more in the new construction field. So there are chapters of Mass Save that deal with new construction, not something we do in house. So if somebody's considering a new project and wants to maximize, the solar gradient and whatnot, I think there is a chapter of Mass Save that deals with new construction and could probably, at least help offer some guidance on that.
I see. Okay.
Thank you for the question. It doesn't come up very often.
Why?
And Mass Save doesn't have anything to do with solar panels.
Yeah. So
Promoting them.
the only thing in the realm of the program right now is that solar battery storage, which is not the panels itself, but it's one aspect of it. And, so you can access the 0% financing for that. Yeah, we'll see what the future holds for us.
Okay. Well, I guess, well, thank you very much, Steve. Wait a minute. Oh, there was a chat.
So I just
hold
want
on.
a phone number to set up so Mass
Okay.
Save will come out and do my house.
Yeah, I can, I mean, if you go to masssave.com, they can handle that.
Okay.
I can also give my, if anybody does have follow-up questions, I can put my contact info here to.
Okay.
Looks like there's a question in the chat.
Right. Debbie's asking,
Oops.
she went to the website, masssave.com, and she only sees a way to schedule virtual assessment. Can you schedule an in-home assessment yet?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So Mass Save is just really trying to emphasize the virtual to reduce time in home as much as possible, but you still can absolutely get an in-person assessment, if you call in, and definitely an option still.
Okay. Well, I'm just pinch hitting here. I was asked at the last minute to run the, so if there aren't any more questions, then I guess Stephen will thank you for, coming and speaking with us. And, we shouldn't take more of your time. So you're free to, to leave, and we'll carry on if we. Oh, wait a minute. There is a hand up here. Is that a question from Ann Richards, or is it? There she
No, I was
is.
just doing the clapping thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
To say thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
okay. Yeah. All right.
Stephen.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
right.
And thanks for having me, Tom, and Chelmsford
And-
Action Climate Team. So have a good day, everybody. And thanks for having me.
You as well.
Great. Okay.
Bye all.
Bye-bye. Okay. Well, now we can continue if people are interested in just talking about, anything related. It's what we call this as a climate conversation. And we all have, experiences and knowledge to share. Like Jeff, when you asked that question about the passive solar heating, are you thinking of, when they have like the water panels on and the sun heats the hot water kind of thing? Yeah, you don't see much of that. Do you have any thoughts on it? Good.
No, I was just referring to how much heat you can get just from windows on the south side.
Oh, okay.
There was a website of a house in New
Yeah.
Hampshire that was entirely heated. They didn't use their furnace at all practically. I think it was called the Solar House, but I don't really remember. I haven't seen it for a while.
Oh, all right. Yeah,
Wow.
but
The
what
tricky
about
thing
when
with
it's
that is in
clouds?
the summer, trying to keep your house cool. I've struggled with that with replacement windows, about, installing the ones that are really heat blocking. That's great in the summer, but then in the winter, you're wishing for that heat to
Right.
come in. I think it's
That's a
hard
good
in this
question.
climate.
Well, you can use shades for the heat blocking, say, maybe,
Oh.
but with these triple pane windows, doesn't it almost prevent hardly any heat or cold? And I like that, getting some heat in the winter through the window with the southern exposure. That's nice.
The cats like it too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was really kind of worried about some of the saying that the heat pumps aren't adequate. We've also had people here speak, and they were much more favorable, their take on heat pumps. Granted, saying that when it gets minus 10 degrees, they could struggle. But anyways, I did bring that up during the talk. I mean, there's a big push to get Mass Save to stop incentivizing upgrades to gas furnaces. I mean, like from this point forward, if there's any teeth to the legislation in this state, you know, they should be preventing, I mean, new installations of gas and oil furnaces should be end the lifing soon, right? But it's hard because it's an industry, and no one wants to, you know, if anything costs more money, nobody's going to be in favor of it. And that's why we have these torturous debates about at what point using heat pumps is not more expensive than using, you know, gas for heating. For cooling, it's a non-issue. They are so much, heat pumps are so much cheap, they're cheaper than whole house air conditioners. And, you know, one thing he alluded to during the talk though, was that the weatherization and insulation and, you know, of the house is so important if you're going to for using heat pumps to heat it. I don't understand the technical explanation of, well, if you're using a gas furnace and your house is drafty, it's going to cost you more to heat it too. But there is something, and I've heard it from enough people now to believe it, that it's especially important to fully weatherize and insulate a house that is going to be, that you are going to, you know, go to heat pumps for heating. So it must be true, I hope. I have some input on solar panels, and I really could use people's help to try to advocate, call your representatives, and ask and say to them that the net metering cap of 10K is too low. I went to go add some solar panels at my house, and it would have increased my system to over 10K per year of output, right? And I would have to petition to get the special approval, and it takes 3 months and might not happen. So the installers are essentially saying, well, just, you know, cut out a panel or two and make it come in under 10K. And it's like, why should residential solar, you know, residential owners be forced to install less capacity systems right now when we have this, you know, the climate bill? But unfortunately, the implementation of you know, of the climate bill roadmap requires more and more bills to get passed. And as simple as expanding or increasing the net metering cap, that may take. There's a bill right now, H3319, that essentially says do that, increase the cap to 25K, and nobody has co-sponsored it. It's in the TUE committee, and who knows? The sponsor, Patricia Haddad, essentially says it will get addressed in this session. But that's not necessarily too encouraging, because the session goes 2 years. So it may be almost 2 years before that regulation gets implemented and people are able. I mean, this goes back historically. The, you know, National Grid or utilities in general didn't want, you know, solar systems on residential solar systems to be too big, you know, to generate more electricity, you know, so that they weren't getting any, you know, money. I guess that's part of it. But the thing is, once people start adopting heat pumps, EVs, heat pump hot water heaters, electric convection stoves, if they electrify everything, then you know, then the amount of electricity is going to go up quite a bit. And so to have the capacity to satisfy that from solar, if you can have a solar system, should go up as well. I mean, and soon. Anyways, but that's my that's my soapbox. Anyone else have anything going on or that they've seen recently that of interest? Yeah. Okay.
We're in the process of starting the application for the solar loan through the UMass Credit Union, as well as getting the heat loan to cover batteries, the Tesla Powerwall batteries.
Great.
So we'll see how that all goes. But we're working on that.
And so you're getting the loan, I assume, to put on solar panels possibly?
Mhm. Yeah, to put, so, yeah,
Okay.
we're working with Revision Energy.
Okay, I've heard of them.
Mhm.
They do a very nice newsletter, very informative.
Yeah,
And I can share that they were the company that in Lowell. Lowell has a program, good program. I went a couple of years ago to promote solar in Lowell, and Revision Energy was the company that came and spoke, and that I think they have vetted. So good.
yeah. I
What
think they're the
company-
ones who installed our level 2 car charger. So
Yeah.
we had a good experience with our electricians there. Sorry about the phone.
Again, you had a good. Was that with Revision?
With Revision, yeah.
Ah.
So
Okay.
that's why we decided to call them again to see about the solar. So I hope it works out. Hope
Maybe
we can get it
maybe
done soon.
maybe I should contact them and tell them, what I went through, and maybe they have some ways of getting around this. Maybe they'll say, "Hey, we'll install a system over, a 20K system for you, and all you have to do is fill out this application, and you get an exception." I don't know.
Yeah, I
hope.
don't know. Maybe they've had better
You're
luck
asking
getting
the
people
question.
exceptions. Yeah. What's that?
Yeah, Felicia?
And could you say more about the batteries? You mentioned something about batteries. Is it for storage? How does that work?
Yeah, so the Tesla Powerwall batteries are the most well-known, I think, of the battery storages available right now. And they can, if we're producing excess energy from the solar, more than we need during the day, we can store it and then use it, possibly at night, like say when we, need it, we're not getting the solar, or when our car is charging. But also, I guess it's a nice option for if the power goes out, at least for the short term. We might not have to use our generator right away because, for a while at least, we'd have stored energy in the batteries. So the
Right.
batteries are pretty expensive at this point. I'm trying to remember exactly how much. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, Tom. I feel
Well, I
like,
think it's like 10,000.
yeah, they're something like
$10,000.
$10,000
It's
or
a lot.
$13,000 each. With the install and like the panel that then controls the flow of power in and out of them. But yeah, I mean, it just seemed like if we were gonna spend the money to do the solar panels, we might as well also get the
Mhm.
batteries, especially because that heat loan that he mentioned, that's a Massachusetts 0% interest loan. You can use it on that. Of course, if we use it on the batteries, we've used up our $25,000 limit for ever taking out another one. So the next time we want to do something like heat pumps, that's not going to be available to us. But
But you should be getting a tax.
right.
federal
You
income
can
tax
get the
break.
tax rebate as well on the batteries as well as the solar
Yeah.
panels. So yeah, so that does offset a good chunk of the cost.
Right. Is there I doubt it, but is there any chance that your system will, when the grid goes out, have they mentioned having a capability where if the sun's shining and your panels are generating electricity, you can be using it for consumption, in real time in your own house?
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah.
Really? Because
I
I'd like
think
to.
so. I mean, anytime you're generating electricity, right, that would be feeding back into a dead grid, whether you have a generator or whatever, you have to be
Right.
cut off from the grid so that you're not shocking a utility worker. So yeah, I believe then you're a closed system.
Right.
But in the future too, I think they mentioned there are certain programs where you can get money off your electricity bill too by allowing National Grid or whoever the energy provider is to take small amounts of energy out of your battery as needed when
Right.
they're having high demand times where otherwise they would need to bring the dirty power plants to offset peak energy. So I think they're hoping that's one reason they're trying to expand battery usage is so that they can be, part of that diversified grid or dispersed grid or whatever they're calling it, so that they don't have to use the dirty power plants as often.
Right. And that applies for the batteries in electric vehicles as well.
Yeah, like they're
So-
advertising the new Ford pickup truck as being able to power your house from your car when the power goes out.
Oh,
Yeah.
my.
Yeah, there aren't that many new cars that have that capability yet, but I think there's
Right.
probably going to be a lot of interest in that.
Right. But in the future, it may happen that,
Mhm.
when there are millions of EVs and millions of power walls, that when there's a peak demand,
Mhm.
that they will then pull from all of those, enough to meet that demand. Because this is what, people are really, really agonizing over. Like, how do you meet peak demand without having to power up a fossil fuel power plant?
Right.
And so some people rail against, there was a little letter to the editor in the Sun the other day where the guy said that solar is unreliable, and he just listed all of the things that diminish it, like clouds, snow, hills, trees. Granted, your solar panels aren't going to be at 100% 100% of the time. And so they're not reliable in that sense, but the sun is very reliable, and it's not going away as soon as coal and oil and gas are going to it, But it was such a terrible argument, all or none, and the more power we can get from clean like solar, especially from residential, a lot of people are just putting all their cards or all their what do you call, I don't know the expression, but on industrial type of scale for things like solar. And then you bump up against the environmentalists or, the other activists that don't, want to have these huge, solar farms in every open space covered with solar panels. So, I mean, I'm always arguing and pushing for the residential, because your roof, putting them on there doesn't hurt anybody else. It shouldn't be an eyesore to anybody, but but it's not. Tell them not to look if it really bothers people, But but Ann, I just wanted to clarify, if you said that the new system you are having built would actually, when the grid goes out, it wouldn't, and the sun shining and you're generating electricity, that you would be able to use it. Because my system, when the grid goes out, I don't get any power from my, because like they're protecting, they don't want the power to go onto the grid and zap somebody. And so you have a mechanism?
Yeah, I think he mentioned that, and that is something I could clarify, but when the revision person was doing the presentation to us with the proposal, I believe that's what he said. I think he said that if we didn't go with the power wall, that would happen, that, the grid just gets cut off to protect the utility workers.
Okay.
But that if we did go with the power wall, then there would be an interconnect where, presumably we could at least use the electricity internally. So I think he mentioned that, but that is something I would have to clarify because I don't remember exactly.
I'll check into that because that would also, maybe the battery makes it possible. And then if you're charging the battery and using, power from it as well, then you'd be able to go a lot longer when there's a power outage. Because a lot of people poo-hoo the batteries like, well, they're going to only last you about, 2 or 3 days. I mean, even if
That's
you,
2 or 3 days that you wouldn't,
Yeah.
you'd be running a generator potentially, or just living without
Yeah.
electricity. So 2 to 3 days is, that's the, I mean, yeah.
it's
In a
still
real
good.
disaster, there's gonna be times when your power is out for possibly up to 2 weeks. I mean, it's catastrophic. But I mean, most power outages don't last too much longer than that anyway. So,
Right.
I mean, especially we actually live on a main road, and we're on the same line as the Carlisle Police Station. So our power outages, I don't believe we've had one that lasted more than 48 hours ever since we moved here. And most of our power outages last only a few hours. So they get us up and running before they get anyone else up and running. So I'm not too concerned about that, but it is a nice option. And if something really horrible happened, then 2 to 3 days is nothing to poo-poo, because it's better than not.
True. And you can prolong it by just running, the
the
critical
minimum.
circuits.
Exactly.
You don't have to power everything and
Yeah, we're
burn
not
through
going to try to heat the
electricity.
house to 70 degrees. I mean, we're just
Yeah.
going to try to stay comfortable and have some lights on. And
Okay. So trying to think. I got an email from Kathy the other day that was interesting. She sent this article about a different kind of wind turbine structure that is huge, but it can generate up to 5 times the power that the huge windmill type turbines, with the rotating blades. What it looks like is a honeycomb, like a matrix, and it's got all sorts of, it has smaller, they're like 50-foot blades rather than 300-foot, and there's lots of them, and they don't have to be anchored into the shore, so they can be further out, they can be anywhere really. So they'd be suitable for like off of the California coast, which has a very deep, quick drop off. Whereas our coast here is so gradual or shallow. So yeah, there are these developments coming that are going to help get us to 100% renewables.
Good.
Oh, one other thing, I should always make a plug for Chelmsford Choice. I hope everybody here is at least getting their electricity through Chelmsford Choice. It's even if you haven't opted up to a green option, because it's a bulk purchasing program, and the more bulk we get going forward, I think it helps Chelmsford have more leverage. And once you're in it, and you become more and more concerned about climate change, and realize that, hey, all I got to do is just pull a little, go in and just click a button in the ChelmsfordChoice.com site and opt for one of the green options, and it may cost a penny or two, more per kilowatt hour, but hell, excuse me. But what's knowing that you're helping to reduce carbon emissions is priceless.
Yes.
Well, I tend to monopolize. That's why I wish Kathy and Bern were here. But thank you, Ann. But is there anybody else that has any? My wife just screamed. I don't know what. But well, actually, I was really scared to death of. Oh no. I was kind of worried about, that have nothing left to talk about after, his presentation was kind of, shorter than typical, but so I think we've heard enough about heat pumps for now. We got to move on to some other topics. That's a good question. Anyone here have any thoughts or suggestions on things they'd like future climate conversations to cover? I know, Burn and, Elizabeth.
I don't know if I was dreaming. I don't know how I got this in my head. My friend said, no, that's not true. But I could have sworn I either read an email, I either saw something on the web. So just tell me if I'm wrong. I thought I read that National Grid, was gonna provide free solar panels, and whatever energy that you have above and beyond, they would take that and apply it to your heating bill. Because I have both electric and gas from them. And he said, no, he tried surfing the web, seeing if he could dig that up again. I said, I must have had a
Yeah.
dream. And it stuck in my head. Did you hear of it? Did anyone hear of it? No. All right.
I haven't.
No.
If it sounds too good to be true.
Maybe
it's-
it'd be really good if they do that. Maybe it was a premonition or something. I don't know.
Although there may be a tinge of truth to it. I've heard if people have a house with a roof that is perfect for solar, it's like, south-facing, angle, no obstructions, flat, single plane, perfect. There are people that will, let you put they want you to put panels on it, and they'll give you some money for it, but they
Well,
get a profit.
you might be thinking about Sunrun Solar, for example. I mean, the impetus for
Yeah.
us going with eventually deciding to buy our own solar panels was Sunrun approaching us.
Yeah.
And they're one of the solar leasing ones. So we have a very ideal roof for solar. And so, they came around knocking on our door, and, with that, they pay for the install. I'm sorry about the phone noise.
Yeah.
They pay for the install.
Yeah.
And, and then you're basically buying your power from them. And then anything over and above what you're using for your own power, you still have the opportunity to sell that back to National Grid and get a rebate
Right.
on your own bill. So you may be thinking about a solar lease.
They did come by the house last night. I never talked to them before, 2 young ladies, and we were
Yeah.
chatting. And I said, I like the solar flower. I don't want anything on my roof, but I do have a perfect Victorian roof.
Oh,
Only 2 little itty bitty skylights they have to avoid, no trees.
Yep.
And it would break my heart, but they didn't give me any literature, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't read it anywhere, and I swear I didn't hear them say it. They
Yeah.
maybe they did say it, and I was off in La La Land, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
You may be thinking of a solar lease type of situation though, where there isn't really money up front. You're just signing up for a monthly payment for like 20
Right.
years, but they're installing the solar.
Yeah,
Right.
no, we didn't come to
So-
even that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but that would be like the solar for free. I mean, they will pay
Basically,
to put
yeah.
the panels on your roof, and you get something, benefit. But
Yeah.
if you've got a good roof, from everything I've seen, and if you can afford it through a loan or directly, you just have the means, I think it's much better to just own them outright. Then you can do whatever you want. Like, then you can have the battery. I mean, you can have a system that you want, and you're in control of it, and but whereas if you have this kind of thing, someone else is calling the shots.
Yeah.
But it's not going to cost you money. So I mean, it's still a good thing to have as many, roofs put to use as possible. But if you can get zero interest loans, this heat loan, as Ann mentioned, because the thing is with the panels, they start to, you break even fairly quickly. I mean, in 8 years, so in the end, you break even. You're really not spending money. You can be making money in the end or saving money. So, I mean, they're the greatest things since sliced bread. I am just shocked that I don't see more houses in town. I don't know what the reluctance is all about. If we can somehow maybe CCAT and this new committee that's forming in Chelmsford can start doing more promotional work to help people to see what's holding them back. Yes, Felicia?
Because isn't some of it is just ignorance, lack of information, or misinformation, like so many other things in our country. But people just don't know. Our church has converted to the heat pumps and has part of the roof with solar panels. And we already saw, it was beautiful. I'm on the finance committee to see that 24 grand
Yeah.
check. That was our first check.
Right.
Yeah. And we were like, okay, this will help pay for some of these renovations. But anyway, yeah, that was our first check. So it's like, oh, well, that's nice.
Chelmsford Senior Center is going to have solar panels. I mean, that's a beautiful roof. That's a to die for roof, too. Yeah. Yeah.
So that 24,000, that was from your solar panel on your roof? You have a lot of roof that was covered
Well,
with
it's
solar.
a big church. It's right on East Merrimack Street in Lowell, Christchurch United, the one that flies the rainbow flag. Yeah,
Wow.
we converted. We're trying to do. I was very proud of them for being this conscious about it. So
In 1 month.
Yeah.
none of that is cheap, but it's good to do things that are good for the planet. We have to.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. We had a pretty good turnout today. That's really nice. And if we have a website you're probably familiar with, ChelmsfordClimate.org, and you can always go there and check it out and get in touch if you want to pursue some things and be active and help. I mean, I haven't been doing enough lately on the Opt Up campaign, but at some point, I'd like to when we can start to go in person to things, like have a table, at some event, then we can try to, hand out promotional, to help get past some of this ignorance about things like, renewable energy, solar, and the heat pumps and the electricity municipal aggregation program, and environmental things, like the trees and natural gardens and conserving water with rain barrels. I mean, it's just so much, so much clotheslines.
Are we allowed to put printed information in places like Market Basket where people have to go?
Yes, yeah. If you go in and ask at the desk, what do you call it? The customer service.
Yeah, courtesy thing, whatever.
I've had the Opt Up flyer put in there in the past. Although I don't know how effective. Most people don't.
1/10 of 1%.
Right. Yeah.
Well, in advertising, that's what it boils down to. So it's the type of advertising. But
I remembered a news item. There's something coming up in Lowell on the 20, it's Saturday, like September 25th, I think. It's either the 24th or the 25th. An electric car festival or whatever you want to call it.
Oh,
It's at the Heritage Ice Cream
yeah,
on
that's where I
Pawtucket,
used to live. Up
Yeah.
Pawtucket Boulevard.
Pawtucket Boulevard. They're going to have about 30. I might be there with one of my electric cars. People there, but those are great because the people who attend those and show off their cars are very knowledgeable and and can just answer so many of your qualms and questions that people have about electric vehicles. And point out and give tips. Because there's a lot of things, once you start driving them that you learn. So that'll be a good thing to attend
Yeah.
in the near future here. It's coming up the 25th, I believe. It's a Saturday then.
Okay.
Um,
How long have you owned an electric car?
Well, I've had one going, it's getting close to 2 years now, a 2019 Chevy Bolt. And I've had a Tesla Model Y since December 11th last year. And it's a sliced bread again. I can't, I've never had anything so good.
Because my
There-
car's getting old.
no-
I'm trying to wait, and I'm hopefully that
Yeah.
it will be more affordable. But the Chevy is it outrageously expensive?
The Chevy,
price.
no. The Tesla is almost twice as much as the Chevy.
Well, just the name told me that. Tesla, I
Okay.
mean,
But
state of the art, but out of my
this-
price range. But the
There
Chevy,
was, yeah,
what's the list about on the
the
Chevy?
amount you save on gas plus on maintenance, I would say in a few years, you really
itself?
start. But you do get, there are big incentive, there are still incentives on the EVs. I highly recommend, it's called, you got to write the Green Energy Consumers Alliance. I mean, I can put that in the chat, type it out, but it's, when
I
you go
would,
to them, they will show you dealers that are giving discounts on electric stock cars in their stock. And
Mhm.
I've been amazed that Green Energy how much you can get. I mean, I got like $8,000 off the Bolt.
A good
And they
chunk.
also gave me a good trade-in on my Toyota Highlander. I just put it into the chat. Green Energy Consumers Alliance.
Thank you.
And they'll show you all of the dealers in the area and all the electric cars that they are giving discounts on. And when you take that into account and the state credit, and then I believe, except for Teslas, which are, they've sold too many, the federal, tax credit, and add it all up, the electric, some electric cars are no more expensive than, a comparable ICE car,
Mm.
But yet that people will, the other thing is you can trade in. I would wonder in a number of years, trading in the gas car is going to probably be a losing proposition as the electric cars become, hit critical mass. Then no one, they're not going to want to give you as much for your gas car. Right now, you'll get a good trade-in. And the thing about EVs that's, I think, different and better than 8 heat pumps is you don't have to wait till your car is dying. No one wants to replace a furnace that still has a lot of life in it, right? I mean, it's throwing money out the window. But you can trade in a car, and the other thing about them is that they're every bit as good. I mean, it's not like the electric car is somewhat less developed or doesn't have the features of all these, beautiful, modern cars. And in fact, and they have acceleration that's better than a gasoline car. So when you're getting on the highway, they have good stability because the battery, you're not going to go flipping over as likely. I don't know. I love them. I have if anybody knows of a downside, speak up now or forever hold your peace. Yeah.
Did Elizabeth leave us?
What?
I thought Elizabeth said, not Elizabeth, I'm sorry, Elizabeth. Anne, I thought Anne said she had an electric car. Do you have an electric car, Elizabeth? Oh, yeah.
Elizabeth?
No, I've been thinking, I have a Ford Focus now. And I was thinking that I'm
Fusion.
really kind of poor. My house gets all my money. But I think I would really like an electric car. Maybe prices will come down as more
Yeah.
people buy them.
Yeah, but I'm going to check out this,
Yeah.
green
Definitely.
energy.
Green Energy Consumers Alliance.
Uh,
And they list cars on that website?
They give you, you can search, they'll give you a list of dealers and the EVs they have available in the discounts on them,
Ah,
I mean, nobody pays full price.
yeah. I mean, I'm still making car payments. If I can trade it in and make car payments towards something that's good for the environment, I'm going to do it.
Right.
yeah.
And depending on how much you pay for your electricity, you can, if you charge your car at some of the EV chargers in town,
Yep.
they give a good rate, 18 cents a kilowatt hour. So, you really could say it, you save there too.
How long does it take to charge?
Hmm?
How long do they take to charge up?
Oh, it depends. A Tesla you can charge up in 40 minutes and you can put almost 300 miles on it in about 45 minutes.
That's less time than my phone.
But on the regular level 2 charges, it's 25 miles in an hour. So those stations you see around town, like the one in Vinyl Square, the one at the library, that's 25 miles in an hour. It adds to your range at 18 cents a kilowatt. And so usually it costs about $1.50 to $2, and when
Wow.
it's really cheap compared to paying $3 a gallon for gasoline and
Yeah.
only getting 20, 25 miles to the gallon.
How do you pay that? Credit card? How do you pay
You
that?
can pay with a yes. What you do is you link your credit card up to ChargePoint runs those charges, those public ones.
Yeah.
And you can have an account and you have a little card on your keychain and you just, tap with it and it'll charge on your credit card.
Wow.
So it's kind of painless and, transparent. I mean, it's really easy.
So they have your credit card number on account somewhere?
You enter it. Yeah.
You link your credit card to your account.
Yeah,
It's there's no cash. I mean,
yeah.
there's no way, right? And yeah, at the charger, there's nobody taking, it's totally, through the internet. But it is simple, like I say, the little plastic card on my keychain, it allows it to unlock, so you can take the nozzle and plug it in
Oh,
to your car.
It's
Now
so
with
brave
the
new world. It's like
it's
kind of surreal. Until I own one, it's like is this really happening? Oh my God.
Well, hey, I'll take you out for a drive anytime if you. I mean,
Whatever.
seriously, I think once you've gone for a ride, so if you go to the festival at the Heritage this
I'd like to
month, that would be an easy way to check out a few and get a. They're
Mhm.
they're doing rides too. So,
Now, who's
What a great
Heritage?
okay, well, I think, my goodness, I think we're going over our.
Well, see, it ended
I
up
hope I
being a
have-
very good conversation.
I
Thank
hope
you.
I haven't
everybody.
bored everybody to death.
Oh, you
but-
did not. No,
Re-
it was very interesting and, smaller. I felt a little braver to ask some of
A
my
little,
questions.
yeah, I know at ECA, those guys are such brainiacs. It's,
I'm like, I have nothing to say, but anyway, thank you
Tonight, yeah.
again. Thank
Thank
you.
okay, well,
Thank you, Elizabeth.
And nice talking with you all. Have a good
we'll
day.
hope to see you again next month. Keep your eyes
sending
out
me the
for,
emails. I'm doing better at throwing them in my calendar.
yeah, for the library announcements in the calendar.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
So-
Bye-bye.
I'm gonna pull the plug.
Bye.
Bye-bye.